911 emergency.
I need 8 units, 5 units to sugar fighting now. It just blew up. It just blew up. I need all 5 units to the sugar refinery now.
Breaking news tonight, a developing story at this hour, 7:30 this evening. The worst of all possible fears in a community, an explosion and an awful fire at the sugar refinery.
On February 7th, 2008, a series of violent sugar dust explosions devastated the Imperial Sugar Refinery in Port Wentworth, Georgia.
My husband is in there watching TV, and he was flipping through the channels, and he said, the sugar refinery just blew up. I said, holy cow, I gotta go. And I just knew that there was going to be a lot of people there because the change of shifts for everybody. So I knew at least there would be a minimum of 60 people, and just got my truck and went.
8 workers died at the scene. 6 more died later at a regional burn center. Dozens of others were injured.
The accident at Imperial Sugar was the deadliest industrial dust explosion in the United States in decades. It highlights the extremely serious nature of combustible dust hazards.
Imperial Sugar's sprawling Port Wentworth complex began operations in 1917 and grew to become one of the largest sugar refining and packaging facilities in the U.S. Granulated sugar from the refinery was stored in 3 100-foot-tall silos and then conveyed into packing buildings where it was packaged for distribution. During this process, sugar spilled onto floors throughout the work area. In places, the spilled sugar was many inches deep. This sugar also contained fine particles which became airborne. The machines were connected to a dust collection system, but it was undersized and in disrepair. Over time, large amounts of dust accumulated on elevated, hard-to-clean surfaces. In the tunnel beneath the sugar silos, granulated sugar flowed through chutes onto a long steel conveyor belt. From time to time, clumps of sugar would become stuck in one of the chutes, blocking the flow of sugar on the belt, spilling sugar onto the floor and releasing dust into the tunnel. But the tunnel was large and ventilated, so this airborne dust did not build up to explosive concentrations. However, in 2007, the company enclosed the conveyor belt with stainless steel panels to protect the sugar from possible contamination. The enclosure was not equipped with a dust collection system. As a consequence, sugar dust would now be trapped inside this enclosure. On February 7, 2008, clumps of sugar were found blocking one of the discharge chutes. Sugar from the adjacent silo likely spilled off the moving belt. Dust likely accumulated to an explosive concentration inside the enclosure. At about 7:15 p.m., the sugar dust contacted a nearby ignition source, likely an overheated bearing, and exploded. This primary explosion blew apart the enclosure and vented into the packing building. Accumulated sugar was lofted and ignited by the advancing fireballs. The dust clouds fueled a chain reaction of secondary explosions, which swept through the buildings. Concrete floors buckled, releasing tons of granulated and powdered sugar into the flames. Emergency evacuation drills had not been conducted, and the explosions had cut the power to much of the interior lighting. In the maze of darkened and damaged stairwells and passageways, workers desperately tried to flee the growing inferno. Correspondence dating back to the late 1950s showed that plant managers in Port Wentworth were aware of the explosive nature of sugar dust and the danger of dust accumulations. In 2006, the CSB issued a study of combustible dust, which called on OSHA to establish a comprehensive combustible dust standard based on the current standards of the National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA. In October 2007, OSHA began implementing a new national emphasis program to increase the enforcement of existing regulations related to combustible dust. Less than 2 months before the disaster, an internal inspection showed that many tons of sugar were still regularly spilling onto the floors. This provided much of the fuel for the massive secondary explosions and fires. The CSB found that over the years the Port Wentworth facility periodically experienced small fires fueled by spilled sugar and accumulated dust on equipment. But none resulted in a sugar dust explosion that propagated through the plant. Investigators said that decades of operating without a catastrophic explosion may have lulled managers into complacency.